this is the first edition of Africa Before Africa podcast, and today we're going to be talking about feminism. And in here, I have a guest, but I am not going to introduce her. I'm going to wait, bring her on board, and have her introduce as well. Welcome, Lady Ifelua. Thank you so much for making our time to be our guest for today. So please introduce yourself.
All right, my name is Ifeoluwa Yatoko. Well, what do you want to know? Can you hear me though? Okay.
Okay, so I said, where are you joining from and what do you do? As
Okay.
our audience will want to know.
All right. Well, I'm joining from Wolverhampton, United Kingdom. I am a business consultant. Also the founder of Africa Rising and Nobel. So what else do you want to know?
All right, thank you so much. So for leisure, what do you do? Just so we have at least an hint about who you are as a person.
Right. I mentioned that I am a business consultant based in United Kingdom here. I also run two organizations, one of which is Africa Rising, of which you are speaking now. So I don't understand why you're trying to pretend. But that's fine. So I run Africa Rising, which is an organization that primarily, empowers women, for leadership and also raises, quality governance materials across Africa. Right. So every project that we do, every everything we put out in Africa Rising is centered on raising transformative leaders, and putting Africa as the forefront of global powerhouse, especially through political leadership. So that's it for Africa Rising. And then I also am the executive director for UBL. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's good that I pretend I don't know you, so at least our audience would know you. Thanks so much for everyone that has joined so far. I haven't introduced myself, so my name is Muyolua Adjevie, currently the programs officer for Africa Rising, and Story Correcting Africa is a project under Africa Rising, and the aim of Story Correcting Africa is in a bid to retell the true African story and also to portray Africa as an excellent continent, which indeed is an excellent continent. So today being the first episode of our podcast, we're going to be having a historical movie review of a movie titled Moremi Ajasoro, and Lady Ife together with me are going to be talking about the movie, and also she will be answering some questions relating to feminism. Thanks once more for joining. So I wouldn't want to assume that everyone on the call currently has seen the movie. So I am going to be doing a short summary of the movie Moremi Ajasoro. It's a movie of a historical woman in a western part of Nigeria, Osun State to be precise. So the woman is a brave woman, was a brave woman because she's no longer in existence. She was a brave woman, and it's a story about the woman and also a story about Ile-Ife. So in the past, in those days, the Ugbo people would normally come to Ife to come and enslave the Ife people. Every now and then they would go to Ile-Ife dressed as masquerades, and then there's something on their body that's the Ile-Ife people from approaching them. So whenever they came to Ile-Ife, then they would take as many possible indigenes of Ife back to their own land, which is the Ugbo land, to go turn them to become slaves, and then they would have to work for them, work on the farm, work in their house, do many jobs. And this kept happening over and over again. It was a source of concern for the Ile-Ife king and also for the Ile-Ife indigene, because they were not confident staying in their state, staying in their city. Then one of the days, the Ife king and his chiefs were having a meeting as to what they can do about the Ugbo people, because they just can't sit back and have them come to their city, enslave their indigenes every now and then. And Moremi joined them in the meeting, greeted them. She was the only woman in the meeting that day. She greeted them and she met them in the discussion. And then she suggested to them that they have to wage war against the Ugbo people, that they can't just sit back and watch them. If they keep watching them do that, they are literally going to have to take everyone in Ile-Ife someday to become their slave. And in response to what Moremi said, one of the prominent chief looked at her and said that they can't even do that. Like, they literally ridiculed what she said, looking at her as a woman, saying, what does she even know? Why would she say they should go fight the spirit beings? Because the Ife people believed that the Igbo people were spirit beings and they were not actual people because of the way they dressed. So since they all made Moremi feel like they literally ridiculed what she said, saying they can't go fight with them, she left the place, and then nothing had to be done. The Ugbo people kept coming again and again. It never stopped. It never stopped. They kept coming again and again. As usual, it was still a source of concern for the king. And knowing fully well that Moremi, the people of Ile-Ife respected her at that time. She was a brave woman. She did excellently well in all she did. She was the wife of the Alafin of Oyo then, but the Alafin was dead. So she and their only son, Oluorobo, was now living in Ile-Ife. So one day the Ile-Ife king decided to go visit Moremi to ask her for help. Like, how is she going to help them to resolve the crisis that is happening between the Ile-Ife people and the Ugbo people? Moremi initially was reluctant in helping because she suggested that they fight initially, and they said they can't do that. So after a little persuasion, Moremi decided to take up an action to help them. In those days, there was a river in Ile-Ife called Estimiri River. It's like one of the river goddess, a very powerful god there that they served, I believe. So she went to the river, asked the river to help her to be able to conquer the Ugbo people, so that Ile-Ife people are going to become free and will no longer be slaves to the Ugbo people again. There was a conversation between Etimiri and Moremi, and Etimiri decided to help Moremi, and she made a pledge that she's going to return back to Etimiri to thank her and give her everything that she requests for. This time around, all of these plans, Moremi didn't hint the king. So the king nor anyone, they didn't know anything about her plans. So she planned that the next time the Ugbo people are going to strike them, she's going to put herself in the position where they are going to get her as a slave and take her to Ugbo land. So they came again as usual, and this time around, Moremi already prepared for them. She told the maid staying with her to take care of her son and run away with her only son so that they wouldn't take her son as a slave also. So they took Moremi with them. Then the people there had to run to the palace that what has happened. They have just come to the city again and they took Moremi. The king, not knowing Moremi, that Moremi had plans all along, was also like agitated, but there was nothing they could do. Moremi got to Ugboland, and when she got to Ugboland, the people that came to capture them from Ife saw her, and they know that from her dressing, from her charisma, they knew she was not like ordinary. She's not like the other Ife people. She's not like the other Ife people then. So she decided, and then when they got to Ugboland, they gave Moremi to be the queen of the Ugbo king. The other wives were obviously beefing her, like, why would the king make Moremi a slave, become his queen in Ugboland? But then there was nothing they could do. Alas, a plague struck the Ugbo kingdom. Like, all of them had infection. Whatever the infection was, no one knew. And even their own Babalawo, permit me to use that, couldn't cure them. Then Moremi could cure them. She went into the farm, got some leaves, mixed it together, give it to those that were sick, one of the princes of the king, the Ugbo king, was also part of those that were sick. So they gave it to him. He became well. The king was also sick. He took the herbs that Moremi made. He also became well. Out of excitement of the queen that her son got healed, she spilled a little secret to Moremi. Then Moremi's plan in Ugbo Kingdom is gradually becoming accomplished. One night again, as a woman that Moremi was, she used that tactics, asked the king some questions. The king finally let out all of the secrets of the Ugbo people. Upon knowing that Moremi's mission was fully accomplished in Ugbo land, she had to look for a way to go back to Ile-Ife, to go let the Ife people know about their secrets, because once they know their secrets, they are going to get to conquer the Ugbo kingdom. So Moremi told the king then, before the king actually spilled out the secrets, she told the king that she's going to give him some herbs that will make him perform better as a man. So that enticed the Ugbo king. And then the next morning, she went out pretending to go get the herbs. From there, she absconded. Upon the Ugbo king knowing that Moremi has absconded, he had to tell them that he had let out the secrets. They had to look for a way to get Moremi. Else, they are gone. But then they tried and tried. Moremi actually got to Ile-Ife before they could get there. She went to Esimiri River, thanked her, and then headed straight to the king's palace. They were all shocked to see her. Like, they were not even expecting that, because all of those that have been enslaved, none ever came back to Ife. So they were all shocked to see her. She told them the secret of the Ugbo people and let them know that they need to get to work as fast as possible, because definitely the Ugbo people are going to come around to come attack them. Truth be told, the Igbo people actually came, and upon their arrival to Ilefe this time, unlike before where they would get slaves, they couldn't get any slaves because they already knew their secrets, and that was how the Ilefe people conquered the Igbo kingdom. Now it was time for Moremi to actually fulfill a vow to Esimiri. Everyone, including the king, the chiefs, and other important dignitaries in Ileife, followed Moremi to the Etimiri River, and then they brought the sacrifice. Apparently, Etimiri River said that's not what she wanted. Etimiri River requested for Moremi's only child, not just only son, only child, Olurogo. And she had no choice but to actually let go of the child. So she became childless, as it were. But then she did all of this just to ensure that Ile-Ife had their freedom and they were no longer afraid in their city of being enslaved. And since that day, no one came to Ile-Ife again to come enslave them. So that's the short story of Moremi Ajasoro. And up till date, she's still a really important dignitary, important person, a well-respected person in Osun State, in the western part of Nigeria, actually. So, Lady Ife, what do you think? What do you think Moremi did, especially like for her to actually take that bold step is a lot.
Okay. Thank you for that, wonderful rundown of the history. I'll try my very best, but I think there's a bit of a lag, with the feedback here. But I'll try my very best to try and respond, to time. I can hear you, but then you would have stopped talking before that gets concluded. And I think it's the same from my end as well. Well, what do I think about, Moremi, did you say?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I feel very strongly, whenever I think about Moremi, and especially because I went to the university I graduated from is Obafemi Awolowo University, and you literally could see the statue, the big Moremi statue, whenever you were going to the hall back then. I lived in Mose for a bit, when I was in part one. And, there's just that center space that you can't go through if, I mean, from hall to the, um, to the lecture areas without actually coming across the Morimi statue. And a lot of times I'll just look up and I would just admire the woman that she was. you know I believed that we were made to believe for a very long time that women were always very silent, women were subservient. And then you know uh, whenever one comes across this kind of figures, it just makes you feel like, okay, there were women, back then, who actually probably defied all odds. And then you get curious as to how they did it. And it's one of the reasons I began to research a bit into feminism as well, because I wanted to know, where did you get the strength from? Where did you get the audacity from? How did you do it? That if Africa, or Africa before Africa, was so heavily patriarchal, how did you do it? That you were able to get into the system, you led wars, you won, and you brought emancipation to a whole empire. So I just feel like she's an epitome of strength, and a very symbol unravels a lot of misconceptions, about the strength and the power of woman, in the African pre-colonial setting, particularly.
That's true. I agree with you that our symbol actually shows strength and the fact that she laid so much sacrifice. Because when I was seeing the movie, I was thinking that this woman didn't even need to do this. Because by default, there's no way the Ugo people would keep coming to Ife and they would ever get to capture her or her children. But then she didn't sit back thinking, yes, I'm safe. There's nothing going to happen to me. Like the other chiefs, they literally sat back knowing there's nothing that is ever going to happen to them. But she took it upon herself. And I would say that might be like one of the strength of a woman, because hardly would you see any woman sit back and watch things destroy, even if those things wouldn't affect her in any way. Took it upon herself. And another thing that I saw about her, again, I don't know if you think the same thing about her, the fact that, as regardless of how they believe as being a strong woman, she still kept her home front.
Mm.
Like she catered for everyone, including her children, including her child, because she had just one child, according to the movie, including her mates, including everyone that was around her. And that just shows a lot of things, because I'm looking at the present day and the present day meaning of feminism and her own definition and the way she actually exemplified.
So my take away from there is that, I think toxic feminism, if I'm to, I don't think it's limited to a space or a people, right? I feel like it's a personality thing. All right. But then I also very much believe that modern day toxic feminism, like the widespread of modern day toxic feminism, is a foreign concept. I strongly believe that it's a foreign concept. So the genesis of it, I wouldn't say it started as a foreign concept. I believe it was based on, individual ideology. All right. We had a woman, there's a story of a woman. I think they call her Aqua Fanana. I can't remember, but her name is gotten from she's a cosmetologist. She and her mom, they were cosmetologists when they were alive. So what they did was they sold powder, they sold cosmetic products originally made, formulated by them, and they were quite successful, very good at what they did. But back then, and this is not in, of course, this is not in Africa. Back then, in their society, men were king. Men were, you know, they could step on your head and you would be fine with that. And in her own little way, Aquafana, I'm going to Google that and try to get the right name. She decided she wanted to put a stop to it, and stop all women who were struggling from domestic abuse and just liberate them. So what she does is she would put a little poison in their in a little vial or something, and then she hides that very carefully in their cosmetic product, of course with a conversation with the women, an agreement with them. So these women will pretend as if they've come to buy cosmetics, take it home and begin to feed their husbands little droplets of poison until the man falls asleep. Yeah, the man just, begins to get sicker and sicker and sicker by the day until he dies. The one they did that really brought them out and made everyone understand, know what was going on, was a woman chickened out. She poisoned her husband, but then as she watched him get sick, she couldn't take it, and then she confessed, and it became a big issue, police and all of that. Our story is on Google. So, you have women like this whose ideology to emancipation is, toxicity. It's very harsh. So I would say that, toxic feminism comes as a result of personal idiosyncrasy and ideology. However, because it still goes back to story correcting Africa, all right, because there is an image that you see. The loudest people in the room, the most popular people in the room, are probably the ones that are most toxic. So the image you consistently see as a woman who understands yourself and believes in your own femininity, right, begins to then shape your original concept of, feminism, right? And because of the loudest people in the room, you begin to tune your idiosyncrasy and pattern it after them. All right. And gradually you begin to betray your core value and exchange it or see it in bad light and believe the negative narrative that has come with that. I strongly, firmly believe that the family system in Africa, that's why the divorce rate in Africa is one of the lowest in the world, right? It's one of the lowest in the world. And I want to bust another bubble and say that I understand some people might come and say, not all the women who remain married are happy and all of that. But not everyone who's working is happy with their jobs, right? That's why we have systems in place, checks and
That's
balances,
true.
to ensure that where you're working, you also have work-life balance, and your employers, right, look after you. Even if they don't want to, they are forced to look after you because there are checks and balances in place. If everyone decided that they were not happy to, because their boss was just a little bit whatever, and because they were unhappy for an hour or so, they decide to quit their jobs, where would you work?
Mm.
Right? Where's the perfect job? All right, it doesn't exist. That's what I'm saying. So longevity, some of the things that
Yeah.
employers look out for when they're bringing people in is how long did you stay in your last job? What's your longevity like? What's your endurance level like? And how did you make an hopeful situation, become hopeful? That's where we're talking about innovation and creativity. All right. And now we're bringing it back to the family front. We're talking about negotiation, intelligent conversation. All right. And all of those things were things that I feel like is embedded in the true African spirit, where you understand when to come in your full power, and also when to dial it down a little and just negotiate for something better. But then because you believe one side of the story, do you understand? You just want to feel like, oh, I'm a little bit uncomfortable. My mental health is shattered. I'm done. I'm leaving this job. And then you keep job hopping. You go through like 10 jobs in a year. I don't know if you get where I'm coming from. All
Yes,
right.
I do.
I'm
Yes.
kind of just bringing the corporate culture now into, the feminism, ideology, and then the marital structure. So I'm bringing it back to what you said when you talked about the fact that she was able to keep her home front, all right, and keep it solidly. There's a Moremi stage play that I watched and I loved so much. I think I watched it like twice, about a few years back when it just aired. So good, so good. I mean, I saw the chemistry. I don't know if that's how history has written it, but there's this chemistry, this very strong chemistry between Moremi and her husband. It's such a beautiful thing. And then when you watch all these epic movies, or when you sit down with old, generation, I love to sit down with them. I spend a lot of time, with older people. I mean, they were my best friends, they still are, to a very large extent. And then you hear how they talk about their wives, you hear how they talk about relationship, you hear how Africans create, I mean, African men, in a sense, create a whole music or some grand gesture just to celebrate their wives. I don't know if you understand it. There's so many things historically supporting of a healthy marital relationship back in the day, back in pre-colonial Africa. All right. So it's not we're not staying long in marriage in Africa because everybody is unhappy. No, I don't, I personally don't believe so. Right. And I feel like some of these things that you have outlined, rightly outlined, with an example like Morimi, is one of the wisdom that has been applied over the years. And that's some of the tenets that we still hold dear. All right. So I'm kind of distancing her now, our image away from toxic femininity and toxic feminism. All right. And I'm saying that the loudest person in the room is not necessarily the wisest, right? The loudest person in the room is not necessarily the right person. All right. So the image that is most projected, in modern feminism is not exactly the is not holistic, right? It's not the exact template of what feminism is, or is not the whole story of what feminism is. Feminism is not fighting against men, right? It's not, and all of that stuff. It's not being able to live in under, in a family environment, not being able to hold a home, not being able to have a good relationship with your co-workers or your bosses or your subordinates, not being able to have a good view, a balanced view of life. It's not fights, right? It's not fight or tussle or struggle. It's strength, it's power, right? It's
Definitely. Yes.
intelligence, right? It's intelligent negotiation. It's being firm in yourself, being firm, being affirmed of yourself, being in your power and contributing to your society without being stifled. Now, when that is threatened, yeah, that's when we now begin to say, okay, that's not right. I have to do something to put that right. All right. So I love the fact that we're talking about someone like Morimi today, because she just really typifies and exemplifies this. Let me let you go ahead and ask your other questions.
Thank you so much. So, from what you said, actually, I thought about it, and it still revolves around what Story Correcting Africa is trying to do. Because why is it that we only get to hear of bad marriages, but those that have the good ones, hardly would you see them come out there? You
Mhm.
wouldn't see them come out there at all. It's every time. I was speaking with a friend recently, like once I see on IG the marriage ended, I already have. I was looking at them, was like, I think they all have a template. While it lasted, we enjoyed it, but this season, this season, I'm like, why
Because
is
of
it
the
that
content.
when and exactly. And they wouldn't even come talk about how good the person is or how good the person was. They all just go back. So it still revolves around. Now, what you said about feminism in the pre-colonial era, and I think even in the colonial era to some extent, about how marriage then was like a unified kind of a thing. Using Fumilayo Ransome-Kuti as an example, I watched the movie that it's not Biodo Steven, I've forgotten her name, that she did about Fumilayo, and how Fumilayo Ransome-Kuti and her husband, like they were literally like that man supported her to the very last, even when he was sick and Fumilayo was he supported her, and that was when the colonial masters were even in Egba land then. But she did something. The unity is still there. So it still goes back to for a woman to actually thrive and to do well, there's that support that she needs. there's that love that she needs. Because when we go out there and we see women that are just cranky, look back, look at them, find they might be doing well, but that home front is lacking, that love is lacking, whether maritally, whether family wise, is actually really lacking. Another thing I noticed about Moremi again is her feminism is not the, like you said, the toxic feminism of yes, I'm equal with a man and this and that, but she actually showed that she has what it takes. She wasn't just trying to be seen or heard. She put an action into being seen and being heard. And that is seen across different women, even in our current age today. Like, I just look at it that that is actually what it means. If we want our voice to be heard, if we want to have the same opportunity as the male gender would have, we have to do something. Because when people see value, forget about it. They don't look at whether it's a male or a female or non-binary, or because there are different genders now. They actually pay for value. They want to have value in them. What do you think about that now?
I 100% agree with you, Moyolua. I 100% agree with you. I do very much believe that value has no gender, right? If you're good, you're good. If you're good, you're good. Although, we may begin to think about, systemic sabotage, that even when they recognize the value, they know you're good. But some people will just still not want to budge because they feel like, just because you're a woman, it's a thing and it exists, and we're not going to downplay that. However, taking a hint from our historical figures like Moremi. Moremi did her thing. She saw a need, she filled it. She wasn't a deep end, and she found a way to swing it. And then eventually she, embraced her spirituality at the time and decided to fight for her own people, right? Which is excellent. If we talk about Alafin's wife, I mean, I said Alafin's wife. I mean, it was. Can you imagine the Alafin or Potoniu? All right, the first female Alafin. History has it that she fought wars. She led men to war. She was a strong woman who did amazingly well. I mean, it's interesting, when I mention the name now, very interestingly, let me just share this fact with you. If you quickly type on Google now and try to find mother of feminism, check out the dates there. You would see that, they would mention Mary Wollstonecraft, and the
Well,
date
yeah.
is yes, the date is in the 1700s, right? And then if you look at Alafin Orunpotoniyu, okay, she existed in the 1500s. Do you see what we're
Wow.
saying about? Yes. Right. Do you see what we're talking about when we talked about, how important it is to begin to story correct, to begin to, and it's not like, there was maybe, the name was coined, as directly. I stand to be corrected anyway, by the previous woman and all of that, or there was a major, it was just that, she stood up for the rights of women. And if we go back in history, a lot of African women who existed before Africa got the name Africa, right, stood up for the same thing, stood up for the rights of women. Not even the rights of women, they're not even trying to say, women should be, it's more like they're just respected in the society because they were good. Moremi was not trying to fight for the rights of women. Do you notice? Moremi wasn't
Yeah,
trying
she
to fight.
wasn't. She was fighting.
No, that was not the aim. The aim is my city is in trouble and I want to save it. Orang Potoni was not trying to fight for the rights of a woman. She just is just showing what she can do as a woman. And we can go on and on like that. We have Idia, We have so many figures even
Mhm.
outside of, several parts of
Africa.
Africa.
Absolutely, yeah.
If we even go back to biblical story, we have Queen Sheba, right? If you trace the history of Queen Sheba, she's from the African descent, and she was so popular. And not once was it mentioned that, oh, Queen Sheba, gathered women and she's trying to fight for the rights of women. Feminism
Mhm.
became an idea because the wrong narrative was spread and peddled, right? For the longest time, where women began to now correct wrongly the original framework and identity in themselves, feeling less of themselves and feeling the need to then begin to fight for that identity, right? And
That's
I
true.
feel very strongly that the African spirit, the African woman's spirit, is not exactly the spirit that tussles against the male gender. It's the spirit that understands that we are on the same wavelength. I bring my quota, you bring your quota, we collaborate, we move on. But because, the idea began to get spread about, some kind of um whatever it is around it, it then became a thing that, oh, okay, maybe women are not so equal after all. And then some of the men as well, when the wrong voice is very loud in the room, it's not just the women that hear it, the men hear it too. And it affects the way they then begin to treat their partners. It affects the way they then begin to see the women, and then they begin to treat women like weaker vessels. So all the foreign ideas and all of that became very predominant in the mind of the woman, beginning to see herself as lesser, and in the mind of the man, beginning to see the woman as the lesser one, right? So it then begins to become a
Yeah.
tussle, and it becomes toxic. But I very much strongly believe that, it's one of the work that we're doing in Story Correcting Africa, understanding the strength that we carried before we got the name Africa, right? To begin with, I mean, let's even go back to what it was, how it was. All right, let's begin to unravel it. Now, we're not saying that the society was perfect, but we want to go back to the historical wisdom that existed before we began to adopt, foreign concepts, and, just things that are not in alignment with who we truly are. All right. So as we grow, we grow with civilization, which is a great thing. All right. We'll pull resources from all around the world, which is an amazing thing. But it's also should not be, it shouldn't be an exchange of identity. All right. Collaboration onto advancement, not an exchange of identity. Because there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with you as a woman. There's nothing wrong with you as an African. There
Definitely.
was never anything wrong with you to begin with. And that's what this is about.
Yes, thank you so much. I agree with you actually. I think one of the important things that we all have to know, regardless of the gender, is being comfortable, being confident in ourselves. Yes, I was going to talk about what you said that at times the men that are seeing the women as a weaker vessel, it's not because they are actually hearing any voice in the room. Sometimes some of them are just, they don't just have that value, they don't see themselves, so they get threatened. Because most of the time I look at some men and I feel their partners is not even doing anything to feel big. Like some women, they just have that leadership charisma, just have that grace in them, and they know it. They don't try to make themselves seen. But of course, if they have a threatening partner, no matter what the woman does, even if the woman kisses his feet, it would still feel, yes, I'm the man. And there's no point. We all know that the man is the man. They have things that they can do. No one is dragging it with them. I know that I am a woman. I have things I can do. So I think one of the important things that we need to do going forward is one of the things that we need to do going forward is just knowing that, no, being confident in ourselves as individuals, forgetting that, not thinking, yes, I have to be the man or I have to be the woman, I have to do something extra to be seen or to be heard. Just being confident. And I agree with you truly, Mother. In those days, the people that we would tag as feminists of today, they didn't act, they were not fighting particularly for their selfish gain. It's for others. You made mention of Idia, you made mention of other women. I was thinking of Queen Amina. I remembered back in secondary school reading about her. She actually led a male-dominated city there. I think she's from the north, one of the northern. One of the important things that we need to do going forward is just everyone being confident in themselves, in their gender, in their color, in their skin, knowing that, actively not looking for another person to validate them. As a man, you don't need a woman or another man to validate you. As a woman, you don't need, just do your thing. Like you said earlier, everyone runs after value. If you're giving value, fine, it might take time before you're seen, but then definitely you're going to be seen. So you kind of touched about the question we posted on the page earlier this week about if feminism is a concept from the after colonization or even from our colonial masters, or it's a concept far before then. Obviously, from our conversation, it's evidence that it's before. Fine, I'm saying this carefully. The distorted version might be as a result of their own their own ideologies that they brought, because obviously in the past women are doing amazingly well in their roles in their various fields, and even the communal spirit that existed then made life really beautiful, made life really amazing. Unlike now, where everyone is, even women are beefing women. Women that are trying to be feminists, women that are trying to make their voice heard, they are beefing themselves, they are fighting. Everyone is kind of fighting for their selfish, not for the community, not for the good of the whole citizen or people around them as it was in the past. So what do you think could be done better, Ma? So we round up with that, like looking at everything we've talked about, what do you think could be done better? What needs to improve about the whole feminism issue? People not, because now every I was speaking with my friend, he's yet to be married, and I'm asking him what is your ideal woman? She said he wants a traditional woman. I don't understand. He said he doesn't want all of this. I can't do this. I can't do that. You can't talk to me any. Of course, no, a man is not meant to talk to a woman anyhow. There's that mutual respect that everyone deserves. But I looked at him and I'm like, are you sure you can still get that that type of a woman in this age and stage? Like even men are now scared of getting married because they don't want to end up with, I can't do this, I can't do that. And women having unrealistic expectations of them that even their fathers, I'm saying that carefully, can meet. What do you think can be done better as regards the feminism issue itself?
Hmm. Wow, that's a really good question. There's something that you mentioned earlier, you know, that you mentioned about men, some men maybe being intimidated by the other gender and all of that. One of the things I wanted to just give an opinion of that a little bit, maybe to correct some impressions out there, that when a practice mm, is when a practice goes on for long enough, it becomes a convention. And if care is not taken, right, and it's not nipped in the bud, it becomes culture, right? And it almost becomes religion. And when I'm talking about religion, I'm not talking about, whatever religious. I'm talking about it being literally the tenets, the templates, the lore, the whatever it is, the bane of a particular existence. And I'm talking relating to this, coming from the point of view of maybe some men being a little bit um, intimidated, if we're going to call it that way. Now, some men, just like every other human being, you'll be surprised that you will find some women who find it very difficult to submit to strong women. In fact, not some women, a lot of women, a lot of women, right? They feel like you're a woman, I'm a woman, so why do I need to, submit to you? You see some women who find it even easier to submit to a man than to submit to a woman. And a lot of times it goes back down to background, experiences, how they were brought up, the kind of images that he had while growing up, inherent issues that they have not healed, and they are refusing to accept and acknowledge. Now, coming from the men's perspective, I would say very carefully that a lot of times it's subconscious conditioning, right? Through images and prototyping. Subconscious conditioning through images and prototyping that has gone ahead of the man even before he was born. So it feels like his attitude, his actions have been rigged even before he had an opportunity of imbibing them. It's difficult to train a boy as a monkey, and then when the boy becomes 20-year-old, you want him to suddenly become a man. You train the monkey, you get a monkey. So if you see a man who seems to tussle with a woman a lot, or have that level of insecurity and all of that being projected, like I said, there are good people and there are bad people, but a lot of times, sometimes it's a function of the voice that has been loud enough all the while that has infected or affected the generation before the boy even had a chance to become a man. So what are the things that has been said around him? What are the images he had seen in the home, the smallest units of the society, right? And then getting into the society, what are the things he's seeing on social media? What are the things he's seeing, he's reading in the newspapers? What are the things, when a boy grows up and he begins to see fight for the right of a woman is equal, immediately you begin to feel like, okay, maybe a woman is not equal after all. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. It's a reverse psychology thing I'm talking about. It's an identity correcting. And an identity cannot be corrected by advocacy.
Yeah.
It has to be
The root
corrected. Yes, you go to the root of the matter. You heal that identity first before anything else. Advocacy plays its part by making the society accountable. But to heal the problem, you really need to have those difficult conversations, right? And heal it from inside out. And a lot of times, it's even an effort, it doesn't get fully healed. So that's why, when you see a manifestation of a broken person who has had lies told him from birth, right, or from childhood, who has had the wrong images shown to him, issues projected at him and projected to him that's why we have issues with racism. All right, because a child has grown up in a household where he's probably been made to believe that he's superior because of the color of his skin. And then because he's trained and brought up this way, he then meets other people that feel like, there's such a self-esteem. I say it a lot, a self-esteem problem by association. Now, because you have that inherent self-esteem problem that has been given to you as a birthright from when you were born, to see your white counterparts as maybe superior than you then begin to overcompensate and see racism and bias in everything without actually healing your identity first and coming into terms with who you are as a human being, with no need for whatever We love DEI. We love
Mm.
feminism. We love feminist movement. We love advocacy. But then there has to be that healing first. It has to be taken care of to begin with from the preliminary stage. All right. And that's why we're going back to history, because I believe so very strongly in DNAs, right? And I believe that one of the ways, that's why when you see a boy misbehaving, one of the ways that the therapist would help unpack issues is to take you back to your childhood. There's a reason a lot of therapists to do it is because it works, right? It means that your root has a lot to do with how you view the world, and even if you're going to heal to begin with. So why not go back to your very roots, which is the root of Africa, right? Not even Africa, the Africa before Africa. The Niger, the Nigeria, the Ghana, the Kenya, the Zimbabwe, you know, all of that before we even got the name, before we got the labels, and see how things were done, understand how things were projected, understand how we did things, right? And then begin to correct, to identity heal from the very source of it, so that you understand that I'm not here to fight for a right that I already have. I'm not here to tussle with you and throw it at your face that, oh, I have a right to sit in the seats that you're sitting. I mean, I'm meant to sit there. So, like, it's a no-brainer. You're not better than me because you are whatever. And I'm not better than you because I'm whatever. If there's anything that is better than one another, it will be on different, grading system. Maybe intelligence, maybe articulation, maybe things like that. Maybe things that can be measured, but not, definitely not color, gender, and all of those kind of things. So what I'm trying to say is that the wrong narratives have been spread for far too long, and it has now made people who are supposed to be in their power give up their power, even without them realizing it. Because the moment you begin to tell your sibling that, are you now better than me, it means you're secretly seeing that sibling as better than you.
Yeah.
The moment you begin to shout that I have the right to sit down here too, I have a right to that as well, it means that a part of you, just as maybe a little part of you, kind of believes that you need to fight for it. You have a right too. So by going forward, our conversation needs to be richly laced and embedded in an understanding of our power first, of our humanity first, of who we are to begin with. It's not like we're not going to have this conversation, but it's not going to come from a place of just mere advocacy and trying to fight and tussle. No, I'm not trying to
Right.
fight anyone for what I have. It's only if I feel like I want to, I don't have it or whatever, I'm not going to try and fight for what I already have. So when I'm going to have that conversation with you, if you're one of them, when I'm saying one of them, it means if you're racist, if you're sexist,
Yeah.
if you're whatever is, and all of that. If I'm going to have a conversation with you, I'm not even going to probably raise my voice, because I'm going to speak from such a position of power that you let you understand that this is my space and I'm taking it either you like it or not. It's just a given. All right. And that's where we're bringing it to. That's why we're having this conversation. And I wish and hope that a lot of people will get on board with these kind of conversations, such that we story correct from the very source of it. Just like a therapist would do, when they're trying to heal you of a trauma, take you back to your childhood and try to heal you from inside out. It's exactly what we're doing with Story Correct in Africa, healing Africa from inside out on so many levels, in feminism, whatever it is ideology, that it is, in projecting as an economic power, in selling the world that we're not some vulnerable peoples, just somewhere trying to get hand me downs. We're not people saviors. Some, yeah, just like you need workers in your space, some of us also probably need help with some things. So it's okay for an exchange of value to go on, but that's just what it is, an exchange of value, nothing more. So if you're giving to some parts of Africa, you're exchanging value, right? And getting value by the people that are coming, to your country as well to work for you. All right, the people that are
Of
working
course.
in your company, the people that are working on your businesses, the doctors who are treating you, right, all the researchers that have gone ahead, so many wonderful things that Black people and Africans have done and contributed to the economy. You are enjoying it one way or the other. And how about we talk about diverse thinking, different perspective, different ideology? Why are you in Africa? Why are you building businesses in Africa? All right, why you trying to get into the space if there's no value in there? All right, some people introduced you to that particular economy and you're cashing out on a big scale. That's value exchange. So it's not a function of you being a savior. It's a function of you recognizing, that you need to play a part in giving back, to certain set of people and certain demography. All right, it's the same way that I would go out and speak to someone out there who doesn't look like me, who is not the same skin as I am, and I feel like there's something I have to give them, and I give it to them. In my workspace, I've had people that would come on board, and it's a professional environment, and we're just having a conversation about maybe your business and things like that, and then you see people literally break down and begin to get really vulnerable and open with you and all of that. That's me giving something to someone and making someone's life better who doesn't look like me. And it's the same way you would also go to the vulnerable people, wherever it is in the world, and give back to them. And let's now bring that back to feminism and close it on this note, that the reason we're doing all of this, the reason we're having this conversation, is a kind of a therapy that re-engineers mindsets. All right, that heals you from the inside out, makes you understand who you are to begin with, takes you back your history, and tells you what your ancestors were capable of. It's not all about the leaves, right? And the haze around the waist and all the cowries and whatever that you've been told for the longest time. There are real intelligent decisions made back then, right? That made society better on a lot of levels and a lot of ways. And that's why that's what we're talking about. That's what we're bringing to fore. All right. So I'm sure that there's a lot to unpack, we can't finish it all
Definitely.
in just so yeah, we'll leave it there for now, and then we'll unpack even more and more and more as we go on. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So on the last note, I actually noticed something also, that truly what he said about going down to the root is actually really important, because now even I've seen families recently where of course they have a male child, they have a female child, and in a subtle manner, some of these things, some of this fight for power as a female started from childhood. You see the way your parents treat the male gender, and you see the way they treat you. Why is my brother not doing it? Permit me to use Yoruba. Ọkùnrin ni, ó máa gbéyàwó sílé. So as a woman, you grow up and you feel, I've heard this all of my life. I need to, like, I'm also someone. I need to fight for these things. So maybe one of the things that needs to be addressed actually is also parents doing justice, making the both gender see that something. Forget about being a male, being a male. You are as good as your brother. Your brother is as good as you. He's not higher than you. You're not lesser than him. So it still goes down to actually nipping it in the bud, going to the root, not shouting. A woman's voice has to be heard, because if you keep screaming that, whether we like it or not, all of these things that our parents has told us, or that our parents, because those are like the first set of people we meet before you even go out there. Why do we see that some women, some men, they are just confident in themselves, regardless of what the society can throw at them? While they were growing up, their parents did a good job at knowing no matter what happens, this is who you are. Like, no matter what anyone says, even if it's not working the way you think is meant to work, this is who you are. So truly, I agree with you, Mala. We need to actually go to the roots, correct these things. We need to go to the roots. Even as Africans, we need to do better in portraying ourselves. When we do, when the white counterpart does something as little, you see them shout, make noise about it. Or an African does something huge, you wouldn't even see it. Like, they feel it's nothing. But then let's just a candle burn a paper in one part of Africa, everyone would know about it. Let an accident happen, before those in that city knows about it, everyone knows. Of course, I am in the UK, so accident happens in the UK. How many times do we see it on the news that these things happen? I would assume that houses get burnt. How many times do we see that? So we actually need to do a good job. If we don't project ourselves well, other people wouldn't do it. If we don't say what the kind of people we are, the amazing things we're doing, the kind of talented minds that we have in Africa, other people, even if they see it, they wouldn't do anything about it because they feel they don't even know their value. So why should we know their value instead? So that's going to be the end of our podcast today. Thank you so much, Lady Fair, for making our time to be our guest. Thank you so much to all for joining. Please do follow us. Follow us on Story Correcting Africa. Follow us on Africa Rising. Follow us on all of our social media handles. Thank you so much. Do enjoy the rest of your day.
It's a pleasure being here. It's been a wonderful evening. Thank you for being such a fantastic host, Muyelua.
Thank you.